print business, which was traditionally one of the most profitable parts of that business, is really changing in a significant way. It's changing in a way not just because of the change in medium, but because of the devices you use to play that medium. That's really going to be different. What does that mean? It means a huge difference. So, Nolan, you talked about moving it up a standard deviation. I will tell you that you can do it 2 standard deviations. And I thought, gee, how can you do that? And if you look at the research of a guy named Benjamin Bloom. How many of you know Benjamin Bloom, those of you in education, right? Most famous for, Bloom's taxonomy. And it turns out he didn't just draw the pyramid and then retire, that he'd actually done all this other stuff. He had done some research that went into schools, replicated it a bunch, different subject, different kids. He moved everybody up 2 standard deviations. That means he went into the 50th percentile for those kids and moved them into the 98th percentile. You can do that. He said you can do it. He showed you could do it back in 1985. What he said then was, by the way, you'll never replicate this because it's too expensive. You can't do the personalized part. You can't do the 24/7 part. You can't change the peer groups. But in a digital age, guess what? You can do all of that. So the goal is 2 standard deviations, which we're seeing now come up in data from North Carolina, South Carolina. People that started 5 years ago, 6 years ago, are seeing that happen in a really fundamental way. So it's cool. Part of it is, again, that use devices. So yes, I do have Google Glass, which is fun. Other people here do too. One of the reasons why it changes everything is what it can do. So here's a football game, right? And this is not on the field, correct? But how important is it when you're watching a game to know where you are and where you're going, right? So imagine watching a game without knowing the score or who the teams were or how much time is left. You just wouldn't think that would be possible. With the devices we're using for digital media, you can get this on this table, on this cup. All of that comes alive. That's augmented reality, it's virtual reality. All those are in schools already. And when you move from print to something you use on a device, all of this comes with it. That's why it's so huge. Anyway, here's an example. This is Google Glass, and it's cool, but outside it paints the constellations over the sky for you. So you want to know where Cassiopeia is? There it is. You look through and you see it. You can look up in the sky and it tells you what airplanes are overhead, right? Delta Flight 701. It'll translate from English to Spanish. It'll do all that stuff. So that may not be exactly where you are yet, but that's how it happens. But I will tell you, it's not about the device. It's never been about the device. The devices are good. We've had tablets a long time, right? So Nolan, you remember when they gave us these? Remember those? Check them out. So we adopted these in my school district, and then the next year they didn't support cuneiform. You know what I mean? So we had to throw them all away. It's just the way it worked anyway. So that's how that worked. But here's why it's different. These are kids. This is a Canadian primary school. What are they looking at? Themselves. They're looking at themselves. So if you teach, the biggest and hardest part is saying, this is meaningful for you. This is about you. This will bring them the Pythagorean theorem. This is going to bring them grammar. So here's what digital should mean. There's not time to go over all this, but you should have dynamic updates. It should maybe update itself as soon as you hit the web, right? Who's president? Barack Obama. Boom. Pluto's a Kepler body. I mean, all that stuff is there. You ought to be able to use real tools. Not a picture of a calculator, but you ought to be able to use a calculator. Draw, grab media, create videos. Should be account-based, which means it's not tethered to a single device. So here's an example. This is a digital social studies book. You hold your mouse over here, you see where people live, right? Which is pretty neat. So here's a science book. If you highlight it, it reads to you. It's digital. I can also change the font, of course. I can also change the language. So in this cloud-based book, ahorita es en español, so here it is, and we can hit, and suddenly...
Conociendo la formación de nuestro sistema solar.
Mira, el libro puede leer. So the book reads, right? It's like, whoa! Again, French, German, huge, depending, if you're a teacher now, you don't have to spend that much time doing that adjustment and scaffolding. It's pretty good. So that stuff works. It's not, if you talk to the people who do Lexile scores, they will tell you a self-reading textbook adds 200 Lexile points. It's the equivalent of adding 200 Lexile points because you don't measure your ability to read, you measure the content that you get out of it, right? So suddenly, just by changing the medium by which science is taught, everybody tests smarter in a certain sense. So it really is something that's important. Of course, you can do this. This is another one. You can change the reading level now in a digital book. And if you've taught, that's one of the issues. You're 8th graders. I want you to be engaged, but you're reading at a 4th grade level. I can't really give you something about Mickey Mouse. I'm not going to have you. But here, I can change. So at school, college level, looking at home, what were we talking about? And you can go back and get that done. That's pretty cool, too, and huge. And when you talk to K-12 people, they go, They do that kind of nodding. It's not a surprise that you know that you can go into Google now and do searches by reading level. I don't know if you know that or not, but in advanced search, you can actually do this. So you can actually go in and do searches by reading level. It's the same content, but in different reading levels. This is what digital means, and this is why you're going to see moves like 2 standard deviations come up. Here's what we can do, and here's what we're going for in the disruption in education. This is where the curve is. This is where we're going.